standing up for what I think is the most natural, elementary response to what is happening just across the fence here, or wherever it is. I will not be able to join you in person on the way to the Elbit factory because I'm not allowed to go there. I'm currently under strict bail conditions for participating in an action against the Elbit murder facility in Bristol. Elbit is the largest arms provider for Israel, and it is only growing by the day. It is providing pretty much every type of ammunition and even some which is regarded as illegal to be used against civilians, like cluster munitions, like white phosphorus. It is also providing at least 85% of the drones, the killer drones that are hovering over Gaza day and night, instilling terror against the people who live in what is a concentration camp. And I'm choosing my words very carefully. A concentration camp that was established in 1948 to warehouse the unwanted people who were ethnically cleansed from their land. And the situation has only gotten worse ever since they were warehoused in that concentration camp. We should seriously not only discuss the crime of apartheid, which is regarded as a crime against humanity, that Israel is practicing and that Elbit is enforcing day and night. We should also possibly discuss the crime of genocide that Israel may be implementing, especially when we talk about Gaza. I mention all of that in the context of marking just the other week 40 years to the massacre in Sabra and Shatila, the Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon. This was a massacre that was basically weaponized. The weapons have been given, sold by the Israeli authorities. There have been decades of strong ties, cooperation, arming and training of the militias that have carried out the massacre. The Israeli military was literally across the fence, across the wall from those refugee camps where the massacre took place, and still no one has been held to account. Why were there Palestinian refugees there? Because they were ethnically cleansed in 1948. It all goes back to there. The action that I took part in against the Elbit headquarters in Bristol took place on Nakba Day. But the Nakba is not a historical event. The Nakba started in 1948. It hasn't ended. This is an ongoing process. Again, something that Elbit is actively participating in. Those drones that are hovering 24 hours a day, that are instilling terror on the almost 2 million civilians of the Gaza concentration camp, most of which are children and teenagers, those who have no potable water, who do not have running like electricity 24 hours a day. Those people are not only being terrorized by Elbit, they are being, their situation, that Nakba, that ongoing control of that population is something that it just goes beyond words. These are not only horrendous crimes, this is a barbaric, monstrous activity that Elbit is responsible for. It is carrying it right now as we speak. So I urge you to go there and tell them what you think, get your friends with you. I am with you in spirit. And please tell them that enough is enough. We will not accept that. We will not accept that because this goes against international law. We will not accept that because this goes against any moral obligation. And we will not accept that because we do want to see equality, freedom, and justice for all the people of the land, not only the privileged few. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to call now upon Hugh Lanning, the former chair of National PSC and a trade unionist.
Good afternoon. I wasn't sure I was going to speak, but I did prepare a few words. I have one I had prepared earlier. But thank you all first for coming, and thank you for the South East Kent PSC. This is becoming a habit, but a good habit, to come to Sandwich and protest. It's sort of like you've adopted it as a cause and a local campaign, and I think that's what we need to happen everywhere there is arms trade around the country. PSC and others need to be there visibly, telling people and letting people know. But it's been a normal summer in Palestine. There was over 40 people killed in Gaza. The journalist Shireen, who you've all got posters for, was shot with Israeli bullets. NGOs have been outlawed, and demolitions and evictions have been taking place on a regular basis. And still you get Joe Biden, Keir Starmer, and I suspect Liz Truss saying Israel is a friend. And I don't know, I sort of judge people by their friends. Are they nice people? Are they good people? Or are they bad people? And on those sort of criteria, then you are really seeing the truth about the politics of people in the establishment in this country and across the West. And Israel has been consistently and regularly a breacher of international law. And it's never, ever held to account. It describes itself as a democracy. And still the West says that as if it believes it, and we hold our tongues about the things. We see no evil. We ignore the falsehoods. We ignore the untruths that are said. And if Israel was a democracy, then Palestinians would be free. They would be free to move. They'd be free to marry who they want to. They'd be free to protest. They'd be free to write. They'd be free to demonstrate. None of those things are true. And even worse than that, they are imprisoned. As has been described in Gaza, in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, they are literally, if you go there, you will see it's a military occupation. It is armed, enforced by Israeli forces, by drones, by all of the systems, by the war that is there. And I think we need to be clear in this country. I remember when I was allowed still to go to Palestine, the Palestinians said, it's great that you come, it's good for the solidarity, but what are you doing in your country to change the attitude of the leadership and the politicians in your country? And this is where our responsibility is. And we have a mountain to climb. If you look at all of the establishment parties, they all say nice things about how terrible it is, but do nothing. And that's why I think events like this, I think the campaign against arms trade, boycott, divestment and sanctions are critical. Because actually, if you look at all opinion polls, if you look at everything that goes on, the support is there for the Palestinians everywhere except for in the establishment. It's my phone, I'm afraid. Okay. Stopped. No, it hasn't. See, just when I was building up to a nice climax. So our responsibility actually is therefore to take the word of the Palestinians and tell their story. You don't have to invent things that have been done to the Palestinians. Just the day-to-day occupation, violence, the history that has been done to them should be in all circumstances enough to change people's minds. But I think it's actions like this, demonstrating, making the point about Shireen, making the point about the arms trade. And why is the arms trade important? It is because it's used violently to oppress the Palestinians, but it's because Israel wants to be part of the Western machine. It's not just arms trade, it's intelligence, it's security cooperation, it's all of the other aspects that are critical, if you like, to enabling Israel in its role and in its occupation. And therefore, demonstrating here is critical, but also there's Tory party, Labour Party, other political conferences coming on. We need to be applying the pressure publicly through boycott, divestment and sanctions to make sure that we are not complicit in what is going on, and that we make clear that the majority of British people are against what Israel does and supports Palestine. Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Thanks very much.
Thank you, Hugh. We're fortunate today that people have made the effort to come from Sussex, from Brighton and Hove, and from Hastings and Rye, PSC groups. So I'd like to ask Laurie Holden from Hastings and Rye, who's going to say a few words.
Thank you very much. We've heard about the crimes of Israel. There's a whole long list. But I just wanted to remind people that Israel doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's got big backers. And that's, I think, we've got to keep on reminding ourselves. Oh, that's all right. The EU is Israel's biggest trade partner. Thank you. And of course, Britain, we know the history of Britain. We go way back, even before the Balfour Declaration. But more recently, Britain has been buying armaments between 450 and 500 million pounds worth. And Elbit has been selling about 45 million pounds worth to the MOD. So there's these huge links between the UK and Israel. And there's naval operations, there's the RAF doing joint operations. So we've got to remember that, but ultimately it's the US that is the issue. And looking at the amount of aid that Israel has given over the years since the State of Israel was set up, this actually works out at $244 billion. And more recently it's been military aid. There was an agreement through the Obama administration, which works out at $3.8 billion a year, and that's military aid, and that works out at over $10 million a day. So we should never forget the importance of these Western countries that support Israel to the hilt. But it's not only military, of course, it's political, successive governments, Democrat, Republican, Labour, Tory, coalition. We should always remember that. But there are grounds for optimism. There's so many independent countries and developing countries that are ditching the US, are breaking free, scrapping the petrodollar and such like. So there are grounds for optimism. And with Palestine, in the US, there was a poll that took place where people were asked your opinions on Israel and Palestine. And when it came out, there was an Israeli newspaper, the headline was, support for Israel plummets. And that was 4 years ago. So in that time, you can imagine that the support for Palestine has been increasing. In the US, it was particularly strong amongst young people, Afro-Americans, Hispanics. So there are big grounds for optimism wherever you look. You're forever hearing of banks that are selling Elbit shares. HSBC sold its shares. Then there's the East Sussex Pension Fund sold its shares in Elbit. And we're forever hearing unions that are supporting the boycott issue. We're hearing churches that are supporting boycott. And wherever you go, we do information stalls. The support for Palestine is so strong. So at grassroots level, things are really looking up. And of course, when you hear Elbit shutting its factory down in Oldham, that is a cause for celebration, big time, I think. And we should really say to the people, and there's a lot of local people involved, gave their support. So we should celebrate that. And we should celebrate and support the organisations involved, the local PSC branches, and of course Palestine Action, who played an excellent role. We should support all these organisations. So there's grounds to be optimistic, particularly looking at Palestine-Israel. The Israelis who are challenging the system, particularly the refuseniks, we should support them and publicise what they're going through. But one of the most important things is the growing solidarity between Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank, and in Israel itself. We've seen it more and more. That's really important. And of course, the growing strength of the Palestinians' fight back in all its various forms. We should support that. So I think there are grounds for optimism. And don't forget, South Africa, they got rid of apartheid, and I'm sure in the future the Palestinian people can also get rid of their apartheid system. So we look forward to the liberation of the Palestinian people. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Laurie. We have people from Brighton and Hove, but I haven't been told if there's anybody from Brighton and Hove who would like to speak. Okay. So what will happen now is I'd like to call the coffin bearers to pick up the coffin. We might need another one. We've got 3, I think. I think we need a 4th. Can I have a volunteer to carry the coffin, please? Yeah, who's gonna come on? Somebody, please. Go
Yeah.
Sorted. Oh yeah, we'll take the plan. Yeah. Oh, I'll get someone anyway. Yeah. So, hang on a minute. I've got these masks. So, in case you don't know, the white masks are supposed to resemble Greek tragedy masks. So what will happen now is our funeral director, Chris Stone, will lead the... go around the front, Chris, yeah. I think that's it. I don't know which is the front. I think that's the front because the picture's on which one is the front? That's the front. Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to walk to the discovery part where we'll make a lot of noise. And we will stick our banners up and take more photographs up there. Just to say, it's about a 10-minute walk, I would say, and once we get out of the town, it's a main road, so I would ask people to be careful, maybe walk no more than 1 or 2, along the road to keep safe. Before I stop talking, just to thank all of our speakers that came today. Can we please give it out for all of our speakers? Thank you. And I'd also like to speak a man who's sitting over there on a bench, and I think he said his name was Martin, but he kindly gave a donation to the Palestine Solidarity Campaign group, which will go to our South East Kent branch for towards other events that we hope to organise again down here as well. So thank you all for coming. And so Chris will lead the funeral procession. And can you carry your pictures as you march of Shireen? And I've asked our musician John Cornwall to serenade us out as we start our march. So if people could assemble behind the coffin.
In between sundown's finish and midnight's broken tone, we ducked inside the doorway as thunder went crashing, as majestic bells of bolts struck shadows in the sounds, seeming to be the chimes of freedom flashing, flashing for the warriors whose strength is not to fight, flashing for the refugees on the unarmed road of flight, and for each and every underdog soldier in the night. And we gazed upon the chimes of freedom flashing, and we gazed upon the chimes of freedom flashing. Thank you, thank you. I'm now going to pack up and head off to follow the coffin.